Right next to Hammond Stadium, where the Twins play spring training games, is 6 Mile Cypress Slough, a long, narrow wetland in Fort Myers. The preserve is actually 11 miles long and contains fresh water flowing towards Estero Bay. There is a 1.2-mile-long boardwalk where we checked out wading birds and warblers and listened to the tufted titmouse. It contains bald cypress trees, which are native to Florida. They are called bald because they lose their needles early in the fall. Pileated woodpeckers are non-migratory, and one of the places they take up permanent residence is cypress swamps. The trees they choose for a nest cavity need a certain amount of decay to make excavating a little easier. They make a new nest each year, which is good for all the other birds and mammals that want these cavities. Along the boardwalk, they had 2 larger ponds. In the pond labeled Wood Duck Pond, we watched an otter, which sadly eluded a photo. In the pond labeled Otter Pond, we watched wood ducks. Maybe they had mixed up the name on these. The next morning, we woke up early and drove 3 hours south to the Everglades. At the area known as Frog Pond near the park entrance, we were able to watch a barn owl hunting in the pre-dawn. We also seen a few other hawks and a harrier, but there wasn't enough light for good photos. Scissortail flycatchers can be spotted from the road at 60 miles per hour with their 9-inch long, deeply forked tail. The long tail helps with the aerial acrobatics needed for catching flies. Although they are usually in Texas and Oklahoma and not Florida, we spotted some hanging out with eastern meadowlarks. They tend to wander a lot on their way to and from their wintering grounds in Mexico, so it is not too unusual that a group of about 20 has been hanging out in the Everglades. Another impressive bird with a forked tail is the swallow-tailed kite. I've been in Florida in March a few times, but I don't remember seeing so many. This trip, we've seen them daily, and especially in the Everglades. They usually arrive from South America in March. This year they arrived in late February. They mainly eat on the fly, rarely perching. They have a taste for stinging insects, including wasps and fire ants. Sometimes they'll bring a whole wasp nest back to their nest and eat the larvae and incorporate it into their own nests. Needless to say, their stomachs are thicker than the average raptor's stomach. After checking out the Ecopond Trail, we made it to the Guy Bradley Visitor Center, about the southernmost point of the Florida Peninsula. A park ranger alerted us to a spot where we could see painted buntings in the grass by the restaurant. We immediately found a couple of females. While this was exciting since we had never seen them before, the female is slightly less impressive than the male. The male is a Crayola box, while the female is just the green crayon. They really stay in the thick scrub. We looked carefully, but only found ground doves, so we abandoned the search to go look at the manatees. The harbor had a few manatees with calves. While the adults are 10 feet long, the calves are only 3 to 4 feet. They will nurse for about a year, but they will stay close to their mothers for 2 years. Calves are actually pretty rare because manatees cannot give birth until age 5, and they only have 1 calf every 2 to 5 years. When they are active, they need to breathe every 2 to 5 minutes, but they can hold their breath for up to 20 minutes when sleeping. Although the water was murky, they did plenty of surfacing. They also have American crocodiles, which have a more pointed snout than alligators and prefer salt water. There was a 20-foot-long crocodile sunning itself by the harbor, but I couldn't get a good picture, and I got distracted with these osprey chicks. This is one of several nesting platforms we saw ospreys using and actively feeding their chicks during our time in Florida. Way out from shore, there was a sandbar with hundreds of black skimmers. Some crows entertained us while we ate lunch. I didn't know at the time, but this area of the park is home to the macaneal tree, which is in the same family as the poinsettia. A milky sap oozes from the tree. Every part of the tree is poisonous, and contact with it can be fatal. Unaware, we made one last search for the male painted bunting, but only found another female. Next, we checked out a few of the park's great boardwalk trails. The trail at West Lake takes you through a giant mangrove forest. Mahogany Hammock had mahogany trees. I was told that we could spot a baby barred owl when we came to the largest mahogany tree. After about 30 minutes of craning our necks and explaining to others what we were looking for, to no avail, suddenly the fledgling was right in the tree we had been looking at. I think this guy was a couple months old because he was almost full size. Even though he was full size, he is still learning to fly and hunt and will not leave the nest until at least 13 weeks. Barred owls can be found anywhere in the eastern United States, as well as in the Pacific Northwest. I thought Minnesota had the most, but they actually may be more common in Florida. Near the Mahogany Hammock Trail, we saw a man stopped in the middle of the road taking a picture of this snowy egret. It was a good thing we also stopped, because this alligator had snuck up within 2 feet of him. It about gave him a heart attack when we pointed it out. Heading back toward Homestead, Florida, we stopped at the Royal Palm Visitor Center. This is home to the famous Aninga Trail. If you like wildlife, this is the place to be. We saw a few of these invasive brown anole lizards. They also have native green anoles. There were a couple of these red cooter turtles. And the very clear waters were just full of fish, including the Florida gar. The Aninga Trail is really the spot to see alligators. A great blue heron was fishing as this alligator approached. I've seen herons catch fish before, but I've never seen one make such quick work of getting out of the water with his catch. As the heron dried off and began working on its meal, suddenly the alligator moved through. Even though it was safely on the shore, the heron froze like a statue until the alligator passed. Then the struggle to make the fish get into his belly resumed. We were startled to the sound of the alligator chomping a large fish it had caught, almost as if it was demonstrating to the heron how it was done. The heron continued to struggle, probably ending up calorie negative by the time he got that fish swallowed. Other birds were also fishing, including the freaky double-crested cormorant, and the trail's namesake, the aninga. One juvenile great blue heron reminded me of a cat with its stalking technique. While it shimmied for position, it showed off its incredible head stabilization technique. Speaking of showing off, I watched a pair of swallow-tailed kites, possibly in an aerial courtship display, as they were synchronized in their dive and chase routine. On the way out, we spotted the non-venomous rough green snake, which was a great find because they normally live mostly in trees, keeping the anola population in check. The next morning, we also got up early and took the 3-mile causeway to Sanibel Island. We were looking to do some shelling at low tide, which was also at sunrise, at Bowman Beach. The beach had been nicely repaired from hurricane damage. We were able to find quite a few shells, but I guess we would have really made a haul if we had went to the north end of the beach instead of the south. We didn't make a haul on birds either, so we decided to head to the J.N. Ding Darling National Wildlife Refuge. J. Norwood Darling, whose nickname was apparently Ding, talked President Truman into creating this refuge in the 40s to safeguard and enhance the wildlife habitat on Sanibel. It contains the largest undeveloped mangrove ecosystem in the United States. The wildlife drive is open from 7 to 5 every day but Friday and costs $10. As you can see, there was an impressive amount of herons, egrets, and ibis constantly flying over the road. They just kept coming. There is a 30-foot tall tower overlooking the appropriately named Tower Pond. We made one stop to photograph this dapper yellow-crowned night heron. They are here on Sanibel to eat the fiddler crabs. Fishermen also love to use these crabs as bait. We headed over to another part of the refuge called Bailey Tract, where we saw the stilts who had just returned from wintering in South America. In recent years, there has been an increase in the number of black-necked stilts nesting on the island. They have the second longest leg-to-body size ratio of all birds, only finishing second to the flamingo. Spoonbill's bill is highly sensitive with receptors that detect vibrations so they can feel for prey in murky water. When they detect something, like a crustacean, the bill closes quickly. Then they lift their bill and usually swallow the aquatic animal whole. The nostrils are on the top of the bill so they can still breathe while fishing. While Scaup, also known as bluebills, are diving ducks, they don't mind foraging in shallow water during migration. These guys mainly wanted to sleep. We decided to make one more pass through the wildlife drive, since $10 bought us all day. We were able to spot the greater and lesser yellowlegs together, as well as some other sandpipers, including the very common willet. With 2 days left in the trip, we still had some great spots to check out, and we were still looking for the elusive male painted bunting. Catch us in Florida Birding 3, the final installment, to see how we did.